He slapped my daughter so hard the sound cracked through the dining room like a book dropped on hardwood. For a moment no one breathed. My fork slipped from my fingers and landed softly against my plate, but I didn't bend to pick it up. I just stared as my daughter's head jerked to the side, her cheek turning red under his handprint. And before I could say a word, he hit her again. Then again. 3 times in less than 10 seconds. My 68-year-old heart felt like it stopped between each blow. If you're a mother, or a woman who's ever been underestimated, stay with me. What happened that night changed everything, and you need to hear why. His mother clapped. Not a startled clap. Not a nervous little pat of her hands. No, a proud, sharp, satisfied clap. That's how she learns to behave, she said as if she were commenting on a child refusing vegetables. The room tilted for a second. The smell of roasted chicken and rosemary butter turned sour in my nose. I felt heat rise behind my eyes, but my voice didn't break. It didn't shake. It didn't even rise. I simply placed my napkin beside my plate, smoothing the edge with my fingertips. My daughter, trembling, tried to lift her hand to her face, but she froze halfway, too scared of what touching that cheek might trigger. And there I sat, calm as winter ice. Because anger makes you sloppy. Silence makes them nervous. My son-in-law glanced at me, expecting the frightened mother-in-law he'd trained me to be over the years. The one who swallowed comments and ignored bruises hidden under sleeves. But tonight, something in my stillness unsettled him. I could see it in the way his smirk faltered. Just slightly. But enough. I pushed back my chair slowly. The clock on the wall read 7:42 p.m., its ticking suddenly louder than the voices fading around me. My daughter's water glass trembled in her hand, tiny rings of ripples forming at the surface. A small detail. But details matter when the world rearranges itself in one violent moment. I stood to help her. He grabbed her arm. Not gently. Not as a warning. Like she was something he owned. Sit down, he ordered her, not even looking at me. My daughter's eyes darted to mine. A silent plea, a decades-old language between mother and child. I felt something ancient rise in my chest, something older than me, older than him, older than this whole house built on pride and intimidation. I stepped closer. Let her go, I said softly. He didn't. In fact, he tightened his grip. His mother leaned back with a smirk, sipping her sweet tea like this was a show she'd watched many times and always enjoyed. The light above us flickered once. A small, strange coincidence, but it caught my attention. I've always believed moments of truth arrive with little warnings if you pay close enough attention. I lowered my gaze to my wrist. The bracelet my granddaughter had given me last Christmas. Silver. Simple. Dave. At least that's what everyone thought. But tucked inside, barely noticeable unless you knew where to look, was a small recording device. A safety tool I'd once carried when I still worked at the Community Women's Center. Old habits never truly die. Tonight that habit became my quiet advantage. But I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. It had already captured everything. The slap, the cheering, the threats in his voice. Still, I didn't let my eyes linger too long. He didn't know. And he wouldn't know. Not yet. Mom, let's just, my daughter whispered, voice shaking. No, I said, my tone as soft as a lullaby. We're leaving. Her husband laughed. She's not going anywhere. I felt my breath steady, slow, controlled, anchored like the slow tightening of a knot. I wasn't a strong woman physically. My knees ached when I stood. My back hurt if I sat too long. But there's a different kind of strength that comes in your 60s. The kind built through decades of surviving, raising children, burying loved ones, enduring disappointments, and still waking up every morning ready to hope again. That strength was mine tonight. I gently reached for my daughter's coat from the back of her chair, brushing her shoulder with a touch that said far more than any words could. She stood not fully but enough. Enough to show him she wasn't as broken as he assumed. He slammed his hand on the table. I said SIE. A tiny glass figurine on the shelf behind him wobbled, then fell and shattered. A strange detail, but again, nothing is random when tempers shake walls more than hands ever could. I placed myself between them, not aggressively, just firmly. He was taller, younger, stronger. But I held his gaze. I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. I let him see a quiet that should have warned him. But abusers never read warning signs. They only read fear, and tonight I didn't offer any. You raised your hand at my daughter, I said. And you did it in front of me. He scoffed. So, what are you going to do? Call someone? His mother chuckled again, crossing her arms. She doesn't have the guts. She never has. Maybe once she was right. But that version of me died the second he touched my daughter. I reached for my purse, not quickly, not threateningly, just enough to shift the energy in the room. My fingers brushed the leather strap and he stiffened like he expected me to pull something out. A phone. Him. A weapon. He didn't know which. And that uncertainty was my power. Mom, my daughter whispered again. Please. Let's just go. I'm letting him know we're leaving, I said, still calm, still gentle. Then I turned my head slightly, meeting his eyes. If you stop us, you'll regret it. He stepped closer, his jaw tightening. I could smell the cologne he'd sprayed too heavily, mixed with the tang of the wine he'd sipped all evening. His breath hit my cheek as he leaned in, trying to intimidate me. But when a woman reaches a certain age, fear hits differently, softer, slower, diluted by wisdom. And sometimes replaced entirely by something stronger. I'm not afraid of you, I whispered. That wiped the smirk off his face for real. For the first time he looked unsure. Not scared. Not yet. But uncertain. His eyes flicked toward his mother. She didn't look worried, not even close. She actually rolled her eyes as if the scene bored her. But his younger sister, sitting at the far end of the table, shifted uncomfortably. She kept glancing at my daughter's cheek. Then at her brother's clenched fist. Then at me. Small shifts. Tiny changes in posture. But meaningful. She saw something she didn't like. Good. Someone in this house still had a conscience. Move, I said quietly, addressing him. He didn't. But he didn't grab my daughter again either. That was enough. I guided my daughter toward the doorway. She winced with every step, her shoulders stiff from impact. I noticed. Mothers always notice. That she kept her arm close to her side as if cradling invisible pain. She had done that before. Not often. Not for long. But enough times for me to suspect things I never had the proof to confirm. Until tonight. Halfway to the door he spoke again. You walk out that door and she's done with this family. I stopped. Not because his words mattered, but because the chandelier above us flickered again. A soft hum filled the room, electricity or tension or both. The smell of burnt sugar from an overbaked pie lingered in the air. The house felt suddenly tighter, smaller, unable to breathe. I turned slowly. Then she's done, I replied. His face hardened. You don't get to make that choice for her. You made it when you hit her, I said, voice steady. We stood there, staring at each other. A mother in her late 60s and a man half her age who believed he controlled the world because he controlled one woman. But tonight he learned he didn't control me. My daughter tugged my sleeve gently. Mom, let's just go. So we did. I opened the door. The cool air brushed my face, smelling faintly of pine from the yard. Behind me the dining room stayed frozen. No one speaking, no one moving, as if the house itself held its breath. And right before I stepped outside I turned back one last time. Not to threaten him. Not to shout. Not to plead. Just to look him in the eye long enough for him to understand. This was the last night he would ever raise his hand at my daughter. Without facing me first. Then I closed the door behind us. But the sound of it, soft, final, deliberate, kept echoing in my chest long after we stepped off their porch. The cool night air wrapped around us like a thin blanket, and my daughter shivered beside me, though I knew it wasn't the temperature that made her shake. Her breath came in small, broken pulls, and she held her cheek gently as if afraid her own touch might hurt her more. I put my arm around her, steady but light, guiding her toward the car parked at the curb. The street was quiet. Too quiet. The kind that makes you hear things you normally ignore. Crickets somewhere in the bushes, a dog barking 2 streets over, the faint hum of a porch light buzzing behind us. My daughter hesitated before getting into the passenger seat. She glanced back at the house, the yellow glow of the dining room window still bright, shadows moving behind the curtains. I didn't look back. I already knew what was behind that light. Denial, arrogance, and the belief that what happened tonight was already forgotten. Not by me. When she finally got into the car, I closed her door gently, then walked around to my side, gripping the car roof for a moment before I lowered myself in. My knees ached from the long evening, but the pain only sharpened the resolve forming in my chest. When I started the engine, my daughter whispered, "Mom." I'm sorry. Those two words nearly broke me. I reached over and squeezed her hand. You have nothing to be sorry for. She nodded, but her eyes stayed on the window, staring at the passing houses as we drove. Street lights flickered across her face, revealing the swelling on her cheek inch by inch. It hadn't fully risen yet, but I knew by morning it would bloom purple. The thought alone made my stomach twist. We didn't speak for the rest of the 10-minute drive. Sometimes silence feels safer than words. When we reached my house, my porch light cast a warm glow across the walkway, and for a brief moment, I wished she had never left home in the first place. But life doesn't rewind. It only moves forward, and sometimes dragging us behind it. Inside, I helped her slip out of her coat. She winced when she raised her left arm. He had grabbed her harder than I realized. I swallowed the fury rising in me. Sit, I said softly, guiding her to the couch. She did. Her shoulders curled inward like she was trying to make herself smaller. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a clean washcloth, soaked it in cool water, wrung it out, and returned to her. When I pressed it gently against her cheek, she sucked in a shaky breath. I'm okay, Mom, she whispered. No, sweetheart, I replied, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. You're not. And that's why we're going to fix this. She looked at me then, really looked at me for the first time all evening. Her eyes glistened and her lower lip trembled as if she were about to cry. But she didn't. She just nodded slowly, though I could tell she didn't understand what I meant. She didn't need to. Not yet. When she leaned back against the cushions, her eyelids drooping, I covered her with the soft gray blanket she loved as a child. Its threads were worn, but it still held warmth well. Something about tucking it around her made her look young again, too young to be enduring the pain she was carrying tonight. I'm going to make some tea, I whispered. Rest. She nodded, eyes closing. In the kitchen, the kettle took longer to boil than usual, or maybe it only felt that way because my heart was pounding with every tick of the clock. The house was too quiet, too still. A night like this shouldn't be calm. Something inside me was vibrating. An old instinct, one I'd put away when I retired from helping women escape dangerous situations. But retirement doesn't erase knowledge. And tonight that knowledge was waking up. When the kettle clicked off, I poured the water into the mug and let the tea steep, but I didn't drink any. Instead, I pulled my phone from my purse. For a long moment I stared at the screen, my reflection faint and tired in the glass. Then I scrolled to a name I hadn't touched in years. Detective Mark Huxley. The last time he and I spoke, he had been a new father, exhausted and overworked, but grateful when the women's center helped his cousin. He'd looked at me then, straight in the eyes, and said, "If you ever need something, you call me first, okay?" I tapped his number. It rang twice before a deep, groggy voice answered. Huxley. Mark, I said softly. It's me. Helen. There was a pause. A slight shift, like he sat up straighter. Helen. It's been years. Are you all right? No, I said. My daughter needs help. That was all I needed to say. His tone sharpened instantly. Tell me exactly what happened. I walked into the living room, watching my daughter sleep under the blanket, her cheek already darkening. He hit her, Mark. 3 times. Hard. In front of me. A long silence. Then, did you record it? Yes. Another pause. More alert this time. Send it to me. I'll call you back in 5. I ended the call and pressed my thumb against my bracelet, opening the hidden latch and revealing the tiny device. I connected it to my phone, saved the file, and sent it. My hands trembled only once, and not from fear. From certainty. 5 minutes later my phone buzzed. This is enough to start something, he said. But she'll need a medical exam. Photos. A written statement. She'll do it, I said, surprising myself with how firm my voice sounded. Good. He hesitated. And Helen, don't go back there tonight. Things like this escalate. I'm not going back there, I said. I have other calls to make. Another silence. Helen, be careful. I always am. When the call ended, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone still in my hand. The tea had grown cold, its steam gone. The only heat left in the room was the burning in my chest. For a moment I closed my eyes and let the weight of everything settle. The years of watching my daughter grow quieter. The excuses she gave. The times she canceled plans last minute. The long sleeves in summer. The tired smile that never reached her eyes. Tonight didn't come out of nowhere. Tonight was the confirmation of everything my heart already knew. I opened my eyes and dialed the next number. Melissa Ward, a journalist who once covered a major domestic abuse story I'd helped with. She picked up immediately, her voice sharp and awake even at this hour. "Helen, what's wrong?" "I have a recording," I said. "And a pattern you'll want to hear." In the minutes that followed, I told her only enough to spark her interest. Not everything, not the twist, not the deeper truth. Just enough for her to say, "Send it," in a voice filled with grim focus. When I hung up, I made one more call, to a women's legal advocate who had helped dozens of helpless women find their footing again. He didn't hesitate. "Bring her in tomorrow morning," she said. "We'll document everything." As I set my phone down, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not fear. Something steadier. He had taken control of my daughter's life piece by piece, but tonight I had taken something back. A small thing maybe, but small things multiply. I walked to the couch and sat down beside my daughter, careful not to wake her. Her face looked softer in sleep, but the bruise stood defiantly across her cheek. I brushed her hair aside gently, my fingers trembling as memories of her childhood flickered through my mind. Her first steps, her first school play, the night she cried after her first heartbreak. I had protected her through all of those moments. But tonight I would protect her differently. I reached for the pen and notepad on the table and began writing a list. Not a list of revenge ideas. No. A list of steps. Evidence to gather. Questions to ask. People to contact. A plan didn't start with fire. It started with structure. Halfway through writing, my daughter stirred, opening her eyes. "Mom," she whispered groggily. "What are you doing?" I squeezed her hand. "Taking care of you." She blinked, confused. "Are you mad at me?" My heart cracked. "No, sweetheart. I'm proud of you for leaving with me." She swallowed hard, tears gathering. "I didn't want you to think I was weak." I pulled her hand to my chest. "It takes strength to walk away." She cried then, soft, tired tears. I held her hand until she drifted back to sleep. And when her breathing grew steady again, I looked down at the list on my lap. By morning, everything would begin. Tonight I had taken the first step. Tonight I started the war. And by the time the sun rose the next morning, I felt the weight of that decision settle over my shoulders like a heavy wool blanket. Not a burden, no. More like something I had finally earned the right to carry. When I opened my eyes, the house was quiet, that soft kind of stillness that only comes right before everything changes. My daughter was still asleep on the couch, curled under the gray blanket, her breathing slow and uneven. I watched her for a moment, letting the ache in my chest remind me why today mattered. The bruise on her cheek had darkened overnight, blooming into something impossible to hide. I didn't wake her right away. She had barely slept this week. She needed a few peaceful minutes before the day's truth began unfolding around us. I moved through the kitchen slowly, careful not to make noise. The tile floor felt cool beneath my slippers, and the scent of old coffee grounds still lingered from the night before. I filled the kettle again, watching the water swirl at the bottom, and for a second I felt a tremor run through my hand. Not fear, not hesitation, just the body's reminder that I was no longer 30 or 40. But age doesn't dim determination. Sometimes it sharpens it. The kettle hummed as it warmed. I reached for the folder I'd prepared. Medical authorization forms, a notebook for details, copies of the audio file I'd saved, everything organized with a precision I hadn't needed in years. It felt like slipping back into an old version of myself, a woman who once lived her life in the middle of other women's battles, a woman who had forgotten she still had that fight in her. My daughter stirred around 8. When I walked over, she blinked up at me, touching her cheek as if the pain surprised her all over again. "Morning," I said gently. She exhaled a shaky breath. "Did you sleep, Mom?" "A little," I lied. She pushed herself up slowly, wincing as her shoulders shifted. "What are we doing today?" "We're going to the clinic," I said. "Then the courthouse." She looked at the blanket instead of me. "Do we have to?" "Yes." I sat beside her. "You're not doing this alone." She nodded, though the fear in her eyes told me courage still felt like a foreign language. But she didn't argue, and that alone said how tired she was of pretending everything was fine. By the time we walked out to the car, the morning air was cool and crisp, carrying the faint scent of early dew and a neighbor's fireplace smoke drifting gently. The sky held that pale blue softness that only comes after a long night of thinking too much. As I helped her into the passenger seat, her hands trembled again. "You okay?" I asked quietly. She nodded, though her eyes stayed downcast. "I didn't think it would hurt this much in the morning. It always hits harder after the adrenaline fades." When I started the car, the radio came on softly. A slow country song about loss and roads and something else I couldn't quite place. My daughter reached out and turned it off. Silence felt safer. The clinic parking lot wasn't full, but enough cars were there for the morning rush. I helped her out, letting her hold onto my arm as we walked. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whoosh, releasing the familiar antiseptic smell that always made me think of long wait times in cold exam rooms. At the front desk, a young receptionist smiled politely until she saw my daughter's cheek. The smile fell into something gentler, more cautious. "We need documentation," I said. She nodded immediately and handed us forms. "A nurse will take you back shortly." In the exam room, the air felt colder. My daughter sat on the table, hands folded tightly in her lap. When the nurse came in, a middle-aged woman with warm eyes, she looked at my daughter the way people look at broken things they want to put back together carefully. "Can you tell me what happened?" the nurse asked softly. My daughter's voice trembled as she spoke, but the words came fully, painfully, honestly. The nurse documented every mark, every bruise, every flinch. Then she pressed her lips together, clearly angry on my daughter's behalf but too professional to say it. When she excused herself to get the doctor, my daughter's shoulders dropped. "You did well," I murmured. She shook her head. "I feel so stupid. Stupid is staying. Brave is leaving." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. Not yet. After the doctor confirmed the injuries were consistent with physical harm, we received the necessary papers. It wasn't victory, just the first piece of proof. But proof is the foundation of everything that comes later. We walked out of the clinic just after 10. The sunlight was brighter now, almost harsh, casting long shadows across the pavement. My daughter squinted against it. "Can we eat something?" she asked softly. "Before the courthouse?" "Of course." We stopped at a small diner nearby, a place with red vinyl booths and the smell of frying bacon in the air. When we sat, the waitress, a woman maybe in her 50s, gave us menus. Her eyes flicked to my daughter's cheek, then to me, waiting. "She'll have pancakes," I said, "and I'll have tea." The waitress nodded, but before she walked away, she placed her hand on my daughter's shoulder gently. "You're safe now," she whispered. My daughter's eyes widened, then softened. We ate quietly, the clatter of plates and soft chatter from nearby tables blending into a hum that felt strangely comforting. Halfway through her meal, my daughter finally spoke. "What if this makes things worse?" "It will before it gets better," I said honestly. "But that doesn't mean we stop." She looked down. "I don't want him ruining your life too." I reached across the table and took her hand. "He won't ruin anything. His world is the one cracking today, not ours." When we left the diner, my phone buzzed. It was Detective Huxley. "Are you free for a call?" he asked. "Yes," I said, stepping toward the car while my daughter buckled in. "I spoke with my supervisor," he said. "We're opening an official case. But there's something else. I've already had 2 anonymous reports come in about him. Something about previous incidents." A cold ripple went through me. "Previous incidents. Do you have details?" I asked. "Not yet. But it means this isn't the first time." "I know," I whispered. "And Helen," he added, "there's an officer stationed near his house today. They're watching for escalation." "Thank you." After the call ended, I sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. The world was shifting. Not fast, not loud, but steadily, like the ground beneath us was moving in slow, deliberate waves. We drove to the courthouse next. The building stood tall, its gray stone steps worn from decades of people seeking justice, answers, or closure. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of old paper and carpet cleaner. The receptionist pointed us toward a private room where women could give their statements without being seen by the public. My daughter hesitated at the doorway. "Mom, I don't know if I can do this." "You don't have to know," I said gently. "You just have to try." She nodded slowly and stepped inside. While she spoke to the officer, I sat on a bench outside. A woman around my age sat a few feet away, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes red-rimmed. We didn't speak, but she offered me a small nod, the kind that says I see you. I know why you're here. And I'm sorry we're both here at all. It reminded me that pain echoes across families, generations, strangers. When my daughter came out, her eyes looked tired but lighter. Relief mixed with fear, a complicated blend that always follows truth spoken aloud. Are you okay? I asked. She nodded. I think so. We walked back to the car together. Just as I opened the door for her, my phone buzzed again. This time a message from Melissa, the journalist. Found something. Call me when you can talk privately. My stomach tightened. I didn't answer yet. Not here. Not with my daughter watching. On the drive home, my daughter rested her head against the window, exhaustion pulling her down. I reached over and pulled the blanket from the back seat, placing it gently over her shoulders. She murmured a soft thank you. When we turned onto my street, a police cruiser drove past us, slowly, deliberately. My daughter stiffened. I squeezed her hand. They're not here for us, I said. They're making sure he doesn't come here. A small comfort. But comfort nonetheless. Inside the house, my daughter sank onto the couch, closing her eyes. I let her rest. She'd done enough for one day. More than enough. I went into the kitchen, finally answering Melissa's message. She picked up on the first ring. Helen, she said, breathless, you won't believe this. Tell me, I said quietly. There are women, 2 at least, who've reported him before. And one of them mentioned his mother, encouraging the behavior. A chill ran through me. Send me what you have, I said. I will. But Helen, this is bigger than you think. I know, I whispered. When I hung up, the house was silent again. My daughter slept in the next room. Outside, the afternoon sun cast warm rectangles of light across the floor. And in the stillness, one truth settled fully into place. This wasn't just my fight anymore. It was the beginning of their world falling apart. And as that truth settled over me like a heavy evening shadow, I realized something else. The more their world cracked, the more pieces of hidden truths would surface. People don't hide secrets well when they're under pressure. The lies they build so carefully start slipping through the smallest cracks. That afternoon, while my daughter slept in the living room with the blanket pulled up to her chin, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone in front of me. The message from Melissa was still open, her words staring back at me like a warning I hadn't fully unpacked yet. This is bigger than you think. People say that casually, but she didn't. I could hear it in her voice earlier. Something uneasy, urgent. I dialed her number before I let the silence swallow me. She picked up immediately. Helen. Thank God. I've been waiting. What did you find? I asked, keeping my voice low so I wouldn't wake my daughter. 2 women, she said. Both years apart. Both with similar stories. I swallowed. Did they report him? Yes. But the reports didn't go far. One of them disappeared from public records right after filing. I leaned back in my chair, the wood creaking softly beneath me. Disappeared how? Moved away suddenly. No forwarding address. No online presence. Nothing. Do you think something happened to her? I whispered. I don't know, she said honestly. But something made her vanish. I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling a quiet ache beneath my ribs. Pain is often loud, but sometimes it slips in quietly like a whisper you can't quite catch. And the second woman? I asked. She stayed in town, Melissa said. But she's scared. Really scared. She agreed to talk to me and maybe to you, but only under strict privacy. Did she mention his mother? I asked, remembering the chilling tone in Melissa's earlier message. Yes, she replied. She said his mother encouraged him. Praised him. Told him not to let women control him. My stomach turned. That line, that bitter belief, felt like a puzzle piece clicking into place. Send me her information, I said. I'll reach out. Helen, she's fragile, Melissa warned. Go slow with her. I will, I promised. After I hung up, I sat there for a long moment, staring at the sunlight stretching across my kitchen floor. Dust floated lazily in the warm beams, drifting like tiny ghosts of truth waiting to be acknowledged. There are moments that mark a shift, when you realize the problem is not one man, but an entire system built around him. His mother wasn't just enabling him, she had shaped him. I pressed my palms against the table, grounding myself. I needed to stay strong. My daughter needed me. The other women needed someone who wouldn't run away. Just as I stood to refill my tea, my daughter groaned softly from the couch. I hurried over and knelt beside her. "Are you hurting?" I asked. "A little," she whispered, touching her cheek. "But I'm okay." I brushed her hair back gently. "There's someone we might talk to later today. Someone who understands what you've been through." She blinked, confused. "Who?" "A woman who went through something similar," I said carefully. "We don't have to decide yet. We'll rest first." She nodded slowly, her eyes tired but trusting. "Okay, Mom." When she drifted back to sleep, I stepped into the hallway and scrolled through my messages. The anonymous woman's number was there, saved under a simple initial, L. No name. No photo. Just an initial and a phone number. I hesitated before calling, partly because I didn't want to overwhelm her, but also because I wanted to be fully composed before hearing her story. Instead, I walked into my bedroom and opened the drawer of my nightstand. Inside was an old leather-bound notebook I hadn't touched in years. It held notes from cases I'd helped with decades ago, women whose stories had never left me. Patterns. Behaviors. Hidden signs. Cycles that repeated from family to family, generation to generation. As I flipped through the pages, I realized something chilling. Every abuser I'd helped someone escape had a circle around them. Enablers. Silent supporters. People who minimized, dismissed, or secretly encouraged the behavior. This wasn't just about my daughter anymore. It was about the family that had raised the man who hurt her. Around noon, my daughter woke again. I made her soup, chicken noodle, simple and warm, and she managed a few spoonfuls. After she finished, she asked quietly, "Mom, do you think he's angry?" "Yes," I said honestly. "But anger doesn't give him power anymore." She stared at her hands. "He's going to blame me for this." "He can blame you all he wants," I said, touching her wrist gently. "Blame doesn't erase evidence." She swallowed hard, absorbing my words like she didn't quite believe them yet. Healing begins with belief. But belief comes slowly. After we cleaned up, I stepped onto the porch to call the anonymous woman. The afternoon sun warmed my shoulders, but my fingers felt cold as I dialed. The phone rang twice. Then a nervous voice answered. "Hello. Elle?" I asked softly. "This is Helen. Melissa gave me your number." Pause. Then a shaky exhale. "She told me you might call." "I understand this is difficult," I said gently. "And you don't have to share anything you're not ready to." Another breath. "He hurt me," she whispered. "Years ago. I tried to warn people. No one listened." My heart tightened. "I'm listening." "I reported him," she continued. "But his mother visited me afterward. He told me I was lying. She said I was trying to destroy her son's life. Then she threatened to ruin my job. I withdrew my report." I closed my eyes, anger and sorrow twisting together inside me. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "He's dangerous," she said. "And she's worse." "Why worse?" I asked quietly. "Because she doesn't see anything wrong with what he does," she replied. "She raised him to believe it." Something inside me shifted when she said that. A small piece of truth, one I wasn't fully ready for, settled into my chest. "Thank you," I said softly. "You've helped more than you know." When we ended the call, I stayed on the porch, staring at the trees lining the street. Their branches swayed gently in the wind, leaves rustling like secrets being whispered. The weight of the woman's words settled heavily over me. His mother wasn't just an enabler. She was a creator. I stepped back inside. My daughter sat on the couch, knees curled to her chest, her eyes distant. "Mom," she asked softly, "why are you so quiet?" I sat beside her. "Because I'm learning things," I said. "Things I wish I didn't have to know." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Am I making your life harder?" I kissed her forehead. "You're the reason I get up every morning. Nothing about you makes my life harder." We sat in silence for a few minutes until my phone buzzed again. This time it was Detective Huxley. "Are you home?" he asked. "Yes." "I need you to know something," he said. We got another call. From someone connected to his workplace. Apparently he's been volatile. There were complaints. My breath caught. "Was anything documented?" "Yes," he said. But all of it was dismissed by someone higher up. Someone who wrote glowing recommendations. Guess who? I didn't need to guess. I already knew. His mother, I whispered. Yes. I thanked him and hung up. My daughter watched me closely, worry in her eyes. What is it? She asked. His mother has been covering up for him for years. Her face paled. Mom, what does that mean? It means, I said softly, there's more to this than we realized. And just as the words left my mouth, there was a knock on the door. Firm, deliberate, not hostile but official. My daughter froze. I stood. Open the door. A police officer stood on my porch, hat in hand. Ma'am, he said gently. We need to speak with you. My heart thudded once, then steadied. More truths were coming. Truths they tried to bury. And now, they were finally rising to the surface. I opened the door wider and stepped aside so he could enter. My daughter sat on the couch, her body tensing immediately, her fingers curling into the blanket. The officer noticed her bruised cheek and softened his posture. We aren't here to cause distress, he said. We're here because new information has surfaced. I sat down beside my daughter, taking her hand. What kind of information? The officer removed a folded paper from his coat. 2 additional reports came in this morning. One from a former coworker of your son-in-law. Another from a neighbor who witnessed something months ago. My daughter's breath caught. Witnessed what? He hesitated. An altercation on your son-in-law's back porch. They saw him shove you, ma'am. I blinked. Me? Yes, he said quietly. It was reported anonymously at the time. But now, with everything happening, the witness resubmitted it with their name attached. A strange, heavy realization washed over me. I remembered the moment. A holiday barbecue last year, when he had accidentally pushed me while reaching for something. I had brushed it off, swallowed the discomfort, convinced myself it was clumsy movement. But it hadn't been. It had been a test. A warning disguised as carelessness. And I hadn't seen it for what it was. The officer continued, we've also acquired body cam footage from an unrelated call at their home months ago. His mother can be heard in the background minimizing something violent. It paints a bigger picture. My daughter trembled. What's going to happen? We need both of you at the station today, he said. The detective wants full statements. And your son-in-law is being brought in for questioning this afternoon. My daughter squeezed my hand so tightly my fingers went numb. This was movement. Real movement. The world had begun shifting under their feet. We'll come, I said softly. The officer nodded, left his card and stepped back outside. As soon as the door closed, my daughter broke down. Not sobbing, just a silent, shaking release, like her body was letting go of months of fear one breath at a time. I wrapped my arms around her. We're almost there, sweetheart. She nodded against my shoulder, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she didn't look afraid, just exhausted and ready for something better. We gathered the necessary paperwork, my organized folder now twice as thick as it had been the night before. When we arrived at the station, Detective Huxley greeted us immediately. He offered my daughter a seat in a private interview room while he spoke with me in the hallway. Helen, he said quietly, there's something you should hear. My pulse quickened. What is it? We interviewed his sister an hour ago. I blinked. His sister. Yes. He exhaled. She confirmed patterns of abuse going back to their childhood. Not just from him but from his mother. Encouraged. Taught. Normalized. The ground under me seemed to shift. She said she stayed silent all these years out of fear of retaliation, he added. But last night's events pushed her to come forward. My throat tightened. She said that. Yes. He looked down. She mentioned you. She said you were the first person she'd ever seen stand up to him. A heavy wave of emotion washed through me. Sorrow for that girl, relief for my daughter, and a quiet, deep ache for all the women who had survived in silence. After I gave my statement, the officer escorted me back to the waiting area. My daughter sat near the window, sunlight falling across her knees. She looked stronger somehow, like the truth was beginning to build a small foundation beneath her feet. Mom, she whispered when I sat beside her, do you think they'll actually do something? Before I could answer, a door opened down the hallway. I turned just in time to see 2 officers escorting my son-in-law inside another room. His face was red with rage and shock, and when he caught sight of my daughter he jerked forward. "You think you can do this to me?" he shouted. Immediately an officer pushed him back. "Sir, stop." But he didn't. His eyes landed on me. "This is you," he growled. "You did this." I stood slowly. Not afraid. Not flinching. Just standing. "Yes," I said. "I did." His face twisted. "I'll ruin you." "No," I said softly. "You already ruined yourself." My daughter reached for my hand and I felt her grip tighten. An officer pulled him away, his threats fading down the hall. My daughter exhaled shakily. "I can't believe he said that in front of the police." "Good," I whispered. "Every word he speaks digs him deeper." Hours passed as paperwork was processed, calls were made, and truths were pulled from their hiding places. By late afternoon, we were informed he'd been formally charged, multiple counts. And an investigation into his mother had been opened for interference and threatening a witness in past cases. My daughter covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. It's happening. It's really happening." I took her face in my hands gently. Justice doesn't always move fast. But when it moves with purpose. When we stepped outside the police station, the evening sun had begun turning gold, casting long shadows across the pavement. My daughter leaned into me as we walked to the car. Her cheek looked less swollen, though the bruise was still deep. But something in her posture was different, lighter, freer. On the drive home her phone buzzed. It was his sister. "Should I answer?" she whispered. "Yes," I said softly. Her hands trembled as she picked up. "Are you safe?" his sister asked immediately. "Yes," my daughter said. "Good." A shaky breath. "I told them everything. I'm sorry I didn't speak sooner. I didn't know how." My daughter blinked, surprised. "Thank you." "There's more," his sister added. "Mom?" She knew about all of it. She encouraged it. She used to tell us that keeping women scared meant they stayed loyal. My daughter covered her mouth, tears spilling again. "Helen," his sister said, her voice dropping, "thank you for stopping him. You saved my brother from becoming worse. And you saved every woman who would have crossed his path." When the call ended, my daughter turned to me with tears streaming down her cheeks. "Mom," she whispered, "you saved me." I pulled her into my arms. I just did what any mother would do. Later that week, we stood in the courtroom together, my daughter's hand wrapped around mine. The judge read the charges calmly, firmly. The evidence, a mosaic of voices, recordings, medical reports, past complaints, spoke for itself. His eyes darted between the judge, the officers, and me. But I didn't look away. This time he was the one trembling. When the verdict was announced, my daughter let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped inside her for years. Relief. Release. Beginning. Outside, people watched as he was led away in handcuffs. His mother was called into a separate room to answer for her part. Whispers spread. Faces turned. Truth traveled faster than lies now. My daughter leaned against me. "Mom, I feel like I can breathe." "You can," I said softly. "This is the first day of your real life." We walked toward the parking lot, sunlight bathing the concrete in warm gold. The world hadn't become perfect overnight. The scars would stay a while. Healing isn't a moment, it's a slow unfurling. But she was safe. She was free. She was hers again. And as I opened the car door for her, she turned to me with a trembling smile. "Mom." "Yes, sweetheart." She wiped her tears and whispered, "Thank you for fighting for me." I squeezed her hand gently. "You were always worth the fight." That night after dinner in our quiet home, we sat on the porch together. The sky stretched wide above us, painted in deep blues and fading gold. My daughter leaned her head on my shoulder. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt peace settle in my chest. Justice wasn't loud. It wasn't glamorous. But it was ours. And we had earned every ounce of it. I closed my eyes, breathed in the cool night air, and knew one final truth. They had taken our peace once. But it belonged to us now. If this story touched your heart, subscribe for more powerful mother-led stories of justice, courage, and quiet revenge. Your support helps these voices be heard.